The weight of understanding. Have you ever noticed how the deeper you think, the more alone you become? How your most profound insights are met with blank stares, uncomfortable silences, or quick topic changes? You're not imagining it. There's a reason why the greatest minds in history often lived on the margins of society, why philosophers died in poverty, and why visionaries were dismissed as madmen. The uncomfortable truth is this: society doesn't just misunderstand deep thinkers, it actively rejects them. And this rejection isn't accidental. It's systematic, psychological, and deeply rooted in human nature itself. The mirror that no one wants to see. When you meet someone who's physically stronger than you might admire their strength or feel motivated to improve your own fitness. When you encounter someone wealthier, you might feel envious, but you don't question your fundamental worth as a person. But intelligence? That's different. That cuts deeper. Psychologists have identified what they call the intellectual mirror effect. When confronted with someone who thinks more deeply, asks better questions, or sees patterns others miss, people don't just feel intellectually inferior, they feel existentially threatened. Your very presence as a deep thinker forces others to confront the limitations of their own understanding, and most people will do anything to avoid that discomfort. This isn't just theory. Brain imaging studies show that when people encounter ideas that challenge their existing beliefs or make them feel intellectually inadequate, their amygdala, the brain's alarm center, activates with the same intensity as when facing physical danger. In other words, your deep thoughts literally trigger other people's fight or flight responses. Dr. Leon Festinger's groundbreaking research on cognitive dissonance revealed something even more disturbing. When faced with information that contradicts their beliefs, people don't change their minds, they attack the messin. The more logical and well-reasoned your argument, the more threatened they feel, and the more likely they are to dismiss or discredit you, personally, rather than engage with your ideas. The evolutionary conspiracy against intelligence. To understand why society fears deep thinkers, we need to look at how human psychology evolved. For 99% of our species' existence, we lived in small tribes where survival depended not on being the smartest person in the group, but on being accepted by the group. Exile meant death. Our brains developed what anthropologists call social conformity bias, a powerful tendency to prioritize group harmony over individual brilliance. Those who challenged the tribe's beliefs, even with superior reasoning, were seen as threats to social cohesion. This ancient programming still runs in our modern minds. Modern neuroscience has discovered something fascinating. The same neural networks that process social rejection also process physical pain. When deep thinkers are dismissed or isolated, their brains literally experience it as injury. This explains why intellectual loneliness feels so viscerally painful. We're biologically wired to interpret social exclusion as a threat to survival. But here's the cruel irony. The very trait that makes someone a deep thinker, the ability to question assumptions, challenge conventions, and think independently, is the same trait that triggers other people's ancient fear of social disruption. The institutional suppression of deep thinking. This bias against deep thinking isn't just individual. It's institutionalized. Our educational systems, despite claiming to value intelligence, actually reward intellectual conformity. Students learn to give the right answers rather than ask the right questions. Those who challenge curriculum, question authority, or think outside prescribed frameworks are labeled as disruptive or difficult. Consider this disturbing statistic. Studies show that creativity and critical thinking skills actually decline the longer children stay in traditional educational systems. We're literally training originality out of people. In corporate environments, the pattern continues with devastating efficiency. Companies speak of innovation while promoting those who maintain stability. The most intellectually curious employees, those who ask uncomfortable questions about processes, challenge outdated strategies, or propose radical improvements, often find themselves marginalized. Meanwhile, those who excel at playing politics and maintaining the status quo climb the ladder. Research by organizational psychologist Adam Grant found that the most creative employees are often rated as the worst performers by their managers. not because their ideas are bad, but because their ideas make others uncomfortable. The system rewards mediocrity disguised as teamwork while punishing brilliance labeled as difficult. The digital age amplification. Social media and digital technology have weaponized society's bias against deep thinking. Algorithms don't reward depth, they reward engagement. The most viral content isn't the most insightful, it's the most emotionally provocative. Complex, nuanced ideas can't compete with simple, emotionally charged sound bites. Consider the attention economy we now live in. The average person's attention span has dropped to 8 seconds, shorter than that of a goldfish. Meanwhile, developing a single profound insight often requires hours or even years of sustained contemplation. We're creating a world where depth is not just undervalued, it's psychologically impossible for most people to process. The result? Deep thinkers find themselves increasingly isolated in a world designed for intellectual consumption rather than intellectual creation. Every notification, every ping, every algorithmic distraction pulls society further away from the sustained attention required for profound thought. Dating apps optimize for superficial attraction. News feeds prioritize outrage over accuracy. Social platforms reward performance over authenticity. In this environment, genuine intellectual depth becomes not just rare, but practically extinct. The historical pattern of persecution. Throughout history, the same pattern repeats. Society's greatest benefactors are often its most rejected contemporaries. The very people who advance human knowledge, challenge harmful traditions, and expand our understanding of reality are dismissed, ridiculed, or worse. During their lifetimes, Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, spent his life teaching people to think critically and question their assumptions. His reward? He was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth and impiety. His real crime wasn't disrespecting the gods, it was teaching people to think for themselves, which threatened the power structure of ancient Athens. Galileo Galilei committed the unforgivable sin of proving that Earth revolves around the sun, shattering centuries of religious dogma. Datarim Singer. Despite his mathematical proofs and telescopic observations, he was branded a heretic, forced to recant his discoveries, and spent the rest of his life under house arrest. The Catholic Church didn't officially acknowledge his correctness until 1992, 350 years later. Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that hand-washing could prevent childbed fever, potentially saving thousands of lives. The medical establishment not only rejected his findings, but ostracized him so completely that he suffered a nervous breakdown and died in an asylum. His radical idea wasn't accepted until decades after his death, when germ theory finally gained acceptance. Friedrich Nietzsche challenged the moral foundations of Western civilization, arguing that traditional values were not eternal truths, but human constructs that could be questioned and reimagined. His contemporaries dismissed him as insane. Today, his philosophy influences psychology, literature, and ethics, but during his lifetime, he lived in poverty and isolation, his work largely ignored. Nikola Tesla envisioned wireless electricity, renewable energy, and technological advances that seemed impossible to his contemporaries. While Thomas Edison became famous and wealthy with simpler inventions, Tesla died alone and impoverished, his revolutionary ideas dismissed as the fantasies of a madman. Today, the company that bears his name is pioneering the electric vehicle revolution he dreamed of over a century ago. Barbara McClintock made groundbreaking discoveries in genetics decades before the scientific community was ready to accept them. Her work on genetic transposition was so advanced that other scientists couldn't even understand it, let alone appreciate its significance. She was marginalized and ignored for decades before finally receiving the Nobel Prize in 1983 for research she had completed in the 1940s. The pattern is clear. Society doesn't just fail to recognize genius, it actively punishes it. The more revolutionary the thinking, the more severe the rejection. The psychology of intellectual rejection. Why does this pattern persist across cultures and centuries? The answer lies in several psychological mechanisms that make deep thinking threatening to the average person. Cognitive load theory. The human brain has limited processing capacity. Deep ideas require significant mental energy to understand. while simple ideas can be processed quickly and easily. Most people's brains are already overwhelmed by daily life, leaving little capacity for complex thinking. When confronted with profound ideas, they experience cognitive overload and respond with avoidance or rejection. The Dunning-Kruger effect. People with limited knowledge in a domain vastly overestimate their competence, while those with deep expertise tend to underestimate theirs. This creates a perverse dynamic where the least qualified people are the most confident in their opinions, while true experts express uncertainty and nuance. Society tends to trust confidence over competence, making deep thinkers appear weak or indecisive. System justification theory. Humans have a powerful psychological need to believe that existing systems are fair, legitimate, and justified. Deep thinkers often reveal the flaws, contradictions, and injustices in current systems, triggering intense psychological discomfort in others. Rather than face the possibility that their worldview is wrong, most people attack the messenger. Terror management theory. Much of human behavior is driven by the unconscious fear of death and meaninglessness. Simple beliefs in social conformity provide psychological comfort against these existential fears. Deep thinkers, by questioning everything and embracing uncertainty, remind others of life's fundamental uncertainty and mortality. This triggers deep anxiety that people avoid by rejecting the thinker. The modern deep thinkers triple bind. Today's deep thinkers face a unique set of challenges that their historical counterparts never had to navigate. The authenticity paradox. In our image-obsessed culture, being genuine about your intellectual interests can make you appear pretentious or elitist. But dumbing down your thoughts to fit in feels like intellectual suicide. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. The attention fragmentation crisis. Deep thinking requires sustained focus, but modern life is designed to fragment attention. Every notification, every interruption, every multitasking demand pulls you away from the deep states necessary for profound insight. You're trying to think deeply in a world designed for shallow engagement. The compression impossibility. Complex ideas can't be reduced to tweets, TikToks, or Instagram posts without losing their essence. The more nuanced you're thinking, the harder it becomes to communicate in our soundbite culture. You either oversimplify and betray your ideas, or maintain complexity and lose your audience. The neuroscience of intellectual isolation. Recent advances in neuroscience have revealed why deep thinkers often feel so profoundly alone. The default mode network. Deep thinkers have unusually active default mode networks, the brain regions that activate during rest and introspection. This means they're constantly processing, analyzing, and connecting ideas even when not actively thinking. For most people, this level of mental activity is exhausting and overwhelming. Cognitive empathy gaps. The more you know about a subject, the harder it becomes to remember what it was like not to know it. This curse of knowledge makes it increasingly difficult for deep thinkers to relate to others' confusion or to communicate effectively with those who haven't traveled the same intellectual journey. The isolation feedback loop. Social rejection triggers the brain's pain centers, which increases stress hormones, which impairs social skills, which leads to more rejection. Deep thinkers often find themselves caught in this neurological trap, becoming increasingly isolated not because they want to be alone, but because their brains are literally rewiring themselves for solitude. The hidden costs of intellectual depth. Being a deep thinker isn't just socially challenging, it comes with psychological costs that are rarely discussed. Analysis paralysis. The ability to see multiple perspectives and potential outcomes can make decision-making agonizing. While others act on instinct or simple rules, deep thinkers can become paralyzed by the complexity they perceive. Existential burden. The more you understand about reality, its randomness, its ultimate meaninglessness, its inherent suffering, the harder it becomes to maintain simple happiness. Ignorance truly can be bliss, and deep thinkers have voluntarily given up that bliss. Emotional exhaustion. Constantly questioning, analyzing, and seeing through social facades is mentally draining. Deep thinkers often experience what psychologists call cognitive fatigue, a state of mental depletion that can feel like depression. Imposter syndrome amplified. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. Deep thinkers are acutely aware of their limitations, which can create crippling self-doubt even as others see them as remarkably intelligent. The art of intellectual navigation. So how do you maintain your intellectual depth while building meaningful connections? How do you honor your need for profound thinking while still functioning in a shallow world? The translation mastery. Learn to be a bridge between complexity and simplicity. The greatest teachers in history weren't just brilliant, they were brilliant translators. Einstein could explain relativity to a child. Feynman could make quantum mechanics accessible to anyone. The key isn't dumbing down. It's finding the essential core that anyone can grasp while preserving the depth for those ready to dive deeper. The graduated disclosure strategy. Don't lead with your deepest insights. Start with accessible ideas and gradually reveal more complexity as people demonstrate readiness. Think of it as intellectual seduction. You're drawing people deeper rather than overwhelming them from the start. The Socratic method. Instead of presenting your conclusions, ask questions that lead others to discover them. People resist being told what to think, but they embrace ideas they feel they've discovered themselves. The art isn't in having the right answers, it's in asking the right questions. The ecosystem approach. Cultivate intellectual biodiversity in your relationships. Have deep friends for profound conversations, casual friends for lighter interactions, professional contacts for collaborative work, and mentors for guidance. Different relationships serve different intellectual and emotional needs. The lighthouse philosophy. Be consistently brilliant rather than sporadically overwhelming. Like a lighthouse, let your intellectual depth be visible and constant, but allow others to approach at their own pace and comfort level. Some ships need guidance, others just need to know you're there. The gift hidden in intellectual solitude. Perhaps the most profound realization for deep thinkers is this: intellectual loneliness isn't just a burden, it's also a privilege. In solitude you can think without performance pressure. No need to moderate your thoughts for social comfort or translate complex ideas for others, explore dangerous ideas. Question everything without worrying about offending others or challenging their comfortable beliefs. Develop authentic perspectives. Form opinions based on evidence and reasoning rather than social approval. Access deeper creativity. Many breakthrough insights emerge from quiet contemplation. Away from the noise of others' expectations, experience intellectual freedom. Follow your curiosity wherever it leads, without having to justify or explain your interests. The great mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Perhaps what he meant is that our greatest strength as thinkers isn't despite our solitude, it's because of it. The long arc of intellectual progress. Here's what history teaches us. Every major advancement in human knowledge, every breakthrough in science, every leap in moral progress came from someone who was willing to think deeply while others preferred to think science. Imply. The internet connecting us right now, the medical knowledge that keeps us healthy, the democratic principles that protect our freedoms, all emerged from minds that were initially rejected by their contemporaries. Your intellectual isolation isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It's the necessary price of seeing clearly in a world that often prefers comfortable blindness. The loneliness you feel isn't punishment for thinking deeply. It's the temporary cost of thinking clearly. Consider this perspective. You're not alone because you're broken. You're alone because you're ahead. The intellectual territory you're exploring is largely unmapped, and pioneers always walk alone before others follow the paths they've cleared. The deep thinker's paradox. Here's the ultimate paradox that deep thinkers must embrace. The world needs what you have to offer, but it's not ready to receive it gracefully. This isn't a flaw in you, it's a feature of human psychology and social dynamics that has persisted throughout history. Your thoughts matter precisely because they make others uncomfortable. Your questions are valuable precisely because they challenge assumptions that need challenging. Your insights, however unpopular they make you, are necessary for human progress. The tragedy isn't that deep thinkers are misunderstood. It's when they stop thinking deeply to avoid the misunderstanding. Don't make that trade. The world has enough shallow thinkers. It needs more people brave enough to dive deep, even if they must swim alone. A manifesto for the intellectually isolated. If you recognize yourself in these words, consider this your manifesto. You are not broken for preferring books to parties, for finding small talk suffocating, for needing solitude to recharge your overactive mind. You are not antisocial for craving meaningful conversations over surface-level chatter. You are not arrogant for questioning widely accepted beliefs or for seeing flaws in popular ideas. You are not weird for finding profound joy in concepts that others find boring, for losing hours to contemplation, for being energized by complexity while others are drained by it. You are not defective for feeling like an alien in a world that seems designed for different kinds of minds. You are a deep thinker, and that is both your burden and your gift. The loneliness you feel is real, but it's also temporary. The isolation you experience is painful, but it's also purposeful. You are the scouts of human consciousness, exploring intellectual territories that others will eventually inhabit. Your mind is not broken, it's evolved. Your solitude is not punishment, it's preparation. Your questions are not problems, they're solutions waiting for the world to catch up. Think deeply. Question boldly. Stand alone when necessary. Trust the process, even when it hurts. The world will catch up eventually, it always does. And when it does, it will thank you for thinking thoughts that others were too afraid to think, for asking questions that others were too comfortable to ask, for seeing truths that others were too blind to perceive. The greatest tragedy would be if you stopped thinking deeply just to ease the loneliness. Don't sacrifice your intellectual depth for social comfort. The world needs what you have to offer, even if it doesn't always know how to receive it. You are not alone in your aloneness. Throughout history, the greatest minds have walked this same lonely path. You are in the finest company of those who chose truth over comfort, depth over popularity, insight over acceptance. Keep thinking. Keep questioning. Keep diving deep. The world is counting on you, even if it doesn't know it yet.